Rafael Nadal, a retired legend and a 22-time Grand Slam champion, reportedly paid $10,000 just to sit in the stands and watch Alex Eala play. The tennis world was completely stunned. People naturally wondered why the King of Clay would spend that kind of money for a girl he once trained for free. This is not merely a story about an expensive ticket. This is the profound story of a mentor, a rising prodigy, a nation holding on to hope, and the exact moment the entire tennis world paused to ask who exactly Alexandra is. You should stay with us to uncover the truth. By the end of this presentation, you will understand exactly why Rafael Nadal calls this 20-year-old Filipina one of the most remarkable players he has ever witnessed. You will also see why the global tennis community is only now beginning to catch up to the undeniable talent he recognized years ago. There are certain players who discover tennis, and then there are rare players whom tennis itself discovers. Alex Eala was born on May 23, 2005, in Quezon City, Philippines. She hails from a nation where basketball is treated like a religion, and boxing is deeply woven into the culture. In her home country, professional world-class tennis had practically no historical foundation at the highest competitive level. Nobody from the Philippines had ever advanced to a Grand Slam singles main draw in the Open era. Furthermore, nobody had ever broken into the top 50 of the professional rankings. Absolutely nobody had accomplished what this young girl was destined to do. She was barely 10 years old when she first crossed paths with the prestigious Nadal family. This fateful encounter did not happen at a major tournament. It also did not occur during some exclusive elite academy tryout. Instead, it happened at a local clinic held right on the courts of her school in Manila. Tony Nadal, who is Rafael's legendary uncle and longtime coach, happened to be there. Amidst that lively crowd of young, wide-eyed children, a small girl from Quezon City bravely stepped up. She hit a few balls with the very man who helped mold one of the greatest athletes in human history. She would later reflect on this moment and laugh about it during an interview. She eagerly shared her perspective on that unforgettable day. She mentioned that there is actually a video on the internet proving it, and she even reminded Tony about how he fed her a few balls while he was visiting Manila. She playfully admitted that he probably does not remember the brief interaction. However, she emphatically swore that the magical moment truly happened. She swore it happened, and the phenomenal events that followed certainly proved her right. By the time she turned 12, Alex had packed her bags, bid an emotional farewell to her family, and relocated to Manacor, Spain, to join the Rafa Nadal Academy. That prestigious facility is a place built entirely on red clay courts and relentless, unwavering discipline. It is fueled by the fundamental belief that true greatness is never simply handed out, but rather it must be fiercely earned. She embraced this philosophy drill by drill, point by point, and day by merciless day. She spent 6 grueling years inside those high walls. That meant 6 long years far away from her home. It also meant 6 years of intense training in a foreign country where the spoken language was not her own. She was passionately chasing a monumental dream that her home country had never witnessed before. Her dedication paid off when she captured the Junior Australian Open doubles title in 2020, followed by the Junior French Open doubles crown in 2021. Then, in the year 2022, she made absolute history by seizing the Junior United States Open Singles Championship. She proudly became the first Filipino athlete to ever achieve such a magnificent feat. However, winning junior titles is merely one part of the journey. The cutthroat realm of professional tennis operates as an entirely different universe. A heavy question hovered over Alex as she finally graduated from the esteemed academy in 2023. It was the exact same daunting question that shadows every single prodigy who dares to leave the protective safety of a structured training system. The world deeply wanted to know if she could truly succeed on the ultimate professional stage. The definitive answer was rapidly approaching, and it would soon shake the sport down to its very foundation. But before we delve into the epic events of Miami, you must ask yourself a critical question. How many players throughout history have trained for 6 dedicated years under the rigorous Rafa Nadal system and emerged ranked 140 in the world at just 19 years of age? Furthermore, how many of those specific players then boldly marched into one of the absolute biggest tournaments on the calendar as a simple wildcard entry and completely turned the established order upside down? The defining moment arrived in March 2025 at the Miami Open. This spectacular competition stands as one of the most prestigious 1,000-level events on the entire global calendar. It is a legendary tournament that has witnessed the sheer brilliance of Serena Williams, Steffi Graf, and virtually every other iconic legend the sport has ever produced. Ranked 140th in the entire world, Alex Eala arrived in Miami armed with nothing but a wild card, which was a special invitation to compete on the grand stage. It was a generous gift from the tournament organizers who perhaps recognized something deeply special in this young Filipina that the traditional ranking system simply could not yet measure. Absolutely nobody expected the incredible sequence of events that happened next. In her opening match, she cleanly and composedly dispatched American Katie Volanets with a score of 6-3, 7-6. The broader tennis world barely even noticed this initial victory. A wild card winning a first-round match is something that happens occasionally and is rarely front-page news. Then came a massive challenge in Elena Ostapenko, a former French Open champion known for a game built on controlled chaos and a forehand that could practically strip paint off concrete walls. Eala stunned her, winning 7-6, 7-5. People finally started paying serious attention to the rising star. Then came Madison Keys, the reigning Australian Open champion and world number 5, who was precisely the kind of elite player that wildcards simply do not defeat. Eala utterly dominated, winning 6-4, 6-2, and the match was not even remotely close. The tennis world was now fully, completely, and urgently awake to her undeniable talent. And then fate, armed with the dark and dramatic humor it often reserves for the most spectacular moments in professional sports, handed her a match against Iga Swiatek in the critical quarterfinals. Iga Swiatek was the undisputed world number 2 at the time. She stood as a massive, towering obstacle in the young player's ambitious path. Swiatek was a 5-time Grand Slam champion and widely considered the most dominant force in women's tennis over the previous 3 consecutive years. Furthermore, there was a hidden detail that made this specific matchup even more extraordinary. Swiatek had actually attended Alex Eala's graduation ceremony from the prestigious Nadal Academy exactly 2 years earlier. She had been personally invited by Rafa himself to attend the celebration. The two talented athletes had shared a deeply emotional and supportive moment together on that significant day. It had been a beautiful scene of the established champion honoring the hopeful graduate. Now, exactly 2 years later, on one of the absolute biggest stages in all of women's tennis, they met again as equals, and Eala dramatically won the match 6-2, 7-5. The entire nation of the Philippines exploded with unbridled joy. The global tennis world went completely silent for a fleeting moment, caught in that specific, electric quietness that always precedes a massive eruption of shock. Rafael Nadal, passionately watching from his peaceful retirement, took to his social media platforms immediately to praise her. He publicly declared that they were extremely proud of Alex. He congratulated her on an absolutely incredible tournament performance. He enthusiastically encouraged her to keep dreaming big and reaching for the stars. She would eventually lose a hard-fought battle in the semi-finals to Jessica Pegula, but absolutely none of that ultimate result mattered to her growing legacy. In the span of just one single week, a 19-year-old wildcard from a nation lacking a professional tennis tradition had remarkably beaten 3 Grand Slam champions and officially become the highest-ranked Filipino in the history of the Women's Tennis Association Tour. Meanwhile, tucked away somewhere in Mallorca at the very academy he painstakingly built, Rafael Nadal was quietly making some serious plans of his own. Here is the fascinating detail that absolutely nobody in the media was talking about right after the Miami tournament concluded. Nadal did not simply post a quick congratulatory message and move on with his busy life. He was actually watching her progress closely, far more intensely than anyone in the general public realized. What he boldly decided to do next is exactly where this captivating narrative transforms into something truly extraordinary. The summer and fall of 2025 proved to be an absolute whirlwind of success for Alex Eala. She triumphantly reached her very first main tour final at Eastbourne in the month of June. She proudly captured her first tour-level 125 title in Guadalajara during September, effectively breaking into the prestigious top 50 rankings. Additionally, she made her highly anticipated Grand Slam main draw debut at the French Open. She miraculously won her very first competitive match on that legendary clay surface. It was a deeply historic and monumental achievement for her blossoming professional career. By doing so, she became the first Filipino player in the Open era to actually win a Grand Slam singles main draw match. Following that milestone, she headed to the 2025 Southeast Asian Games held in Thailand. She proudly captured the gold medal in the women's singles competition, decisively ending a grueling 26-year championship drought for the Philippines in that specific event. It happened during an incredibly tense match that featured 3 highly questionable line calls. The chaotic environment included an unprecedented mid-match request from Eala to officially replace the linesman. The surrounding atmosphere felt so intensely charged that it resembled a major championship final, far more than a simple regional sporting event. Even while navigating that immense pressure and ultimately securing the hard-fought victory, Eala remained completely composed under circumstances that undoubtedly would have shattered the mental resolve of far lesser players. Throughout all of the chaos, through every single triumphant match, major milestone, and historic first achievement, there remained a legendary retired man who simply never stopped watching her spectacular rise. On November 19, 2025, exactly 1 year to the very day of his emotional retirement from professional tennis, a historic moment quietly unfolded. Rafael Nadal confidently stepped back onto a hard court, not for a heavily promoted comeback, and certainly not for a lucrative exhibition match. He simply walked onto the pristine courts of his own academy in Mallorca, picked up a familiar racket, and practiced intensely with Alex Eala. He later posted the heartwarming video to his 14 million devoted followers on various social media platforms. He expressed that exactly 1 year later, it felt absolutely great to be back swinging on a tennis court. He specifically added that it was incredibly great to practice with you, Alex Eala. He playfully warned her that the next time they played, he would be significantly stronger. The internet instantly detonated with excitement, but it was what unfolded next that absolutely nobody saw coming. According to multiple shocking reports that rapidly swept through tight-knit tennis circles and passionate fan communities worldwide, a secret plan had been executed. These were the kinds of verified reports that sent social media into a complete, unbridled frenzy. Nadal had not only been carefully tracking Eala's matches from the comfort of his home, but he had also acted quietly behind the scenes. He had privately and meticulously arranged to attend one of her most critical matches in person to offer his silent support. He managed to do so in a highly exclusive situation where standard ticketing was completely unavailable, meaning last-minute, premium arrangements had to be secured for the former world number 1. The staggering cost of this endeavor was reported to be in the astronomical range of $10,000. He willingly paid $10,000 just to witness one single match. Earlier in the year, Eala had gleefully recounted the very first private message Nadal had ever sent to her directly. She excitedly told reporters that Rafa had actually messaged her. She confessed it was the first time he had ever reached out to her personally, making it a massive shock to see his name pop up. She added a funny story to the mix, admitting she only noticed the message a couple of days after he sent it. She expressed how thrilling it was to finally see his notification waiting for her. The fact remains that she simply overlooked a direct message from a living legend for a couple of days. That specific, amusing detail is exactly what beautifully humanizes this entire incredible narrative. Here is a driven 20-year-old hailing from Manila, rightfully ranked in the elite top 50 of the world. She was so incredibly busy fighting tooth and nail for her rightful place in professional tennis that she completely missed a private message from Rafael Nadal for 2 whole days. On the other side of the equation stands the greatest clay court player of all time. He is a phenomenally wealthy man who could afford to go absolutely anywhere and do anything he pleased. He could choose to see anyone on the planet, yet he actively chose to spend $10,000 to quietly sit in a stadium and watch her compete. That level of dedication is not mere mentorship, it is profound belief. That is the rare, unspoken kind of absolute faith that true champions instantly recognize in each other, bridging the gap across generations. Naturally, the global tennis world had countless thoughts about this, and they shared a lot of them publicly. Unfortunately, Not all of those loud opinions were particularly kind or supportive. It quickly became apparent that not everyone was celebrating her meteoric rise. When the wild story initially broke, the staggering numbers rapidly circulated through mainstream tennis media. The unbelievable tale spread like wildfire across dedicated fan accounts and dominated mainstream sports coverage networks. The public reaction was sharply divided in a telling way that actually revealed far more about the tennis world's toxic relationship with emerging newcomers than it did about Alex Eala herself. Fortunately, some vocal supporters expressed pure, unadulterated joy. Passionate Filipino fans completely flooded social media platforms with a fierce national pride that truly defied any conventional measurement. They live in a vibrant country where achieving global greatness in tennis has always felt like a painfully distant, almost impossible dream. The breathtaking idea that the sport's greatest retired champion was paying out of his own pocket to watch their local girl compete provided a kind of massive validation that goes far beyond simple rankings and shiny titles. However, deep within the established tennis world, harsh criticism was quick to follow the celebration. Skeptical analysts immediately pointed directly to Eala's serve, which had long been heavily scrutinized and considered the absolute most vulnerable aspect of her evolving game. In February of 2026, during the high-stakes quarterfinals of the Dubai Tennis Championships, she suffered a crushing defeat to Coco Gauff with a scoreline of 6-0, 6-2. Disappointed tennis observers and harsh critics were absolutely merciless in their subsequent evaluations. One deeply critical analysis glaringly noted that she won just 32% of her points behind her initial first serve, and an equally dismal 40% behind her second attempt. The brutal assessment boldly claimed that those specific statistical numbers are simply never going to get a player anywhere against the very best elite competitors in modern women's tennis. That scathing review was heavily circulated and widely discussed. Soon after, probing questions regarding her overall physical fitness inevitably followed the initial technical critiques. At just 20 years old, her occasionally fatigued performances were being intensely scrutinized in rigid ways that felt completely legitimate to some professionals, yet seemed incredibly premature to many of her loyal fans. Emboldened critics soon began asking a much sharper, more pointed question. Is Rafael Nadal's massive public devotion to Alex Eala actually doing her far more measurable harm than actual good? Is the sheer, overwhelming weight of his profound belief, constantly broadcast to tens of millions of devoted followers, simply adding unbearable pressure to a young player still actively figuring out her complex game? Some loud voices in the community went even further with their bold claims. Several prominent voices within the tennis media landscape directly suggested that the compelling story of Nadal's $10,000 ticket was being cleverly manipulated by Philippine media outlets. They boldly argued that global sports entertainment platforms were intentionally using this specific narrative to vastly oversell Eala's actual, current place in the rigid tennis hierarchy. She had undeniably managed to defeat Iga Swiatek exactly once. She had also successfully captured one Women's Tennis Association Tour Level 125 title during her young career. She was currently ranked comfortably within the 40s and 50s worldwide, which is genuinely a remarkable feat for any Filipino player in history. However, in strict, unforgiving global terms, she was still heavily categorized as merely an emerging, raw talent rather than the completely polished, finished article that the surrounding narrative seemed desperate to construct. And then there was the unforgettable, highly controversial Southeast Asian Games incident. In late December 2025, during the incredibly tense women's singles final held in Thailand, Eala had suddenly faced 3 consecutive, highly questionable line calls from one specific linesman. Directly after the third blatantly poor call, she made a decisive and unprecedented move right on the court. She formally and firmly requested that the head umpire completely replace the offending linesman, which is considered a remarkably rare, unbelievably bold, and highly controversial move to execute on that specific grand stage. Ultimately, she powerfully won the hard-fought match and secured the coveted gold medal for her proud nation. But the sheer magnitude of the explosive incident traveled far beyond regional Southeast Asian sports media coverage and quickly became a massive global talking point. Countless people passionately talked about her impressive, icy composure under extreme pressure, while others loudly questioned whether her brash actions were genuinely appropriate or completely out of line. It undeniably added yet another thick layer of complexity to the complicated, evolving public image of a deeply focused young player, attempting to carefully navigate the treacherous politics of professional sport while simultaneously trying to build a lasting legacy. The surrounding public noise was undeniably getting significantly louder and far more intense with every passing day. And the heavy, loaded question being quietly whispered in exclusive tennis circles was precisely the one that absolutely nobody wanted to bravely ask out loud in public. What if absolutely all of this overwhelming attention, combined with Nadal's massive public endorsement, the historic first achievements, the soaring national pride, and the legendary ticket that cost a reported $10,000, simply proves to be far too much pressure, far too soon? But here is precisely what those loud, persistent critics were completely failing to account for in their endless, negative assessments. Here is the vital missing piece of the puzzle, that the glaring serve statistics, the tough losses to Coco Gauff, and the chaotic noise echoing across social media platforms simply could never accurately measure or define. Here is the absolute, undeniable truth behind exactly why Rafael Nadal really showed up in person that day. When Alex Eala calmly sat down at a packed, high-profile press conference in Abu Dhabi in early 2026, fresh off her heavily publicized practice session with Rafael Nadal, she faced the eager media directly. She was explicitly asked what it felt like to actually share a competitive court with the legendary man who built the very academy that originally shaped her early career. She smiled brightly and immediately said it was absolutely crazy. It was the very first time she had ever formally played with him, and she openly admitted that she was incredibly nervous beforehand. She noted that it was physically demanding right out of the gate, even though he had been officially off the professional tennis court for an entire year. She emphasized that just being able to genuinely say that she actively trained with Rafa is an absolutely incredible, unbelievable privilege. She expressed that she currently feels very lucky and deeply blessed to have experienced that specific moment. He wisely told her that it is critically important to constantly surround yourself with genuinely good people, and she firmly believed that is absolutely great, timeless advice. Furthermore, he also deliberately told her several other incredibly important, specific things concerning her evolving game. That specific detail was precisely what genuinely impressed her the most out of the entire monumental experience. He fundamentally told her critical things about her game, proving he did not just simply show up for a fun photo opportunity or to casually celebrate her recent success. He purposefully showed up to actually teach her something profound. The reported $10,000 was absolutely never about a wealthy fan casually purchasing a fleeting, expensive memory to brag about later. It was the decisive action of a dedicated mentor, purposefully continuing a massive, deeply personal investment he had originally made in a promising young player years before she was even old enough to legally hold a professional license. The actual money involved was completely irrelevant to Rafael Nadal's overall mission. What truly mattered was the profound, undeniable message his simple presence sent directly to Eala, and, by extension, to the entire watching world. Eala herself had actually once publicly spoken of Nadal with deep reverence, stating that he is incredibly grounded and has managed to achieve far more than anything she could possibly dream of in her own lifetime. She had explicitly noted that the incredible fact that he is still consistently so nice, genuine, and remarkably humble to absolutely everyone around the facility is genuinely very admirable to witness firsthand. That exact sentiment perfectly encapsulates the true, enduring power of genuine mentorship. It absolutely does not abruptly stop simply when the formal, legal arrangement officially ends. Eala had formally graduated from the prestigious Nadal Academy way back in 2023. At that point, the official contract concluded, and the formal, structured relationship was essentially complete on paper. And yet, despite all of that, Nadal kept consistently sending her private messages of encouragement. He kept deliberately posting highly public congratulations to actively boost her confidence. He intentionally came back to the competitive court for the very first time in an entire year, purposefully choosing her as his partner. He did not return to the court simply to prepare for an official comeback, nor was it for a lucrative commercial arrangement or an exhibition match. He purposefully came back to genuinely share a competitive court specifically with her. And when witnessing a major match required $10,000 in complicated arrangements to secure a seat in person, he famously paid it without the slightest hesitation. Because Rafael Nadal, who valiantly spent his entire illustrious career playing with an almost supernatural, unwavering belief in the supreme value of brutal hard work, recognized something incredibly profound. That same fierce resilience and deep understanding of the long game allowed him to clearly recognize something truly special in Alex Eala that completely goes beyond a simple serve percentage or a fluctuating ranking number on a screen. He fundamentally recognized the raw, undeniable mentality of a true champion buried deep within her. He remembered the eager young girl who once desperately ran after him at the bustling Madrid airport just to enthusiastically say a quick hello to her hero. He vividly remembered the courageous girl who boldly moved to Spain at just 12 years of age and spent 6 long, grueling years grinding endlessly on red clay courts while remaining incredibly far from her devoted family. He watched the exact same fearless girl who confidently walked into the massive Miami tournament as a simple wildcard entry ranked an unimpressive 140th in the entire world, and who then stubbornly, adamantly refused to lose to absolutely anyone who dared stand in her determined way. He saw the intensely focused girl who, even in the middle of a chaotic Southeast Asian Games final, completely marred by several terribly bad line calls, impressively kept her cool composure and ultimately won the elusive gold medal for her proud nation. That specific trait is absolutely not just natural talent. That is the true definition of deep, unshakable character. And Rafael Nadal, arguably more than almost any other legendary player in the long, storied history of professional tennis, instinctively knows exactly what world-class character actually looks like when he sees it developing in a hungry young player. He also intimately knows precisely what the incredibly painful, arduous journey to the top actually feels like. He understands that the tough losses to players like Coco Gauff, the ongoing serve struggles, and the widespread fitness concerns are ultimately none of them completely fatal to a promising career. He bravely went through his own intense, character-building fires during his early professional years on the demanding tour. He spent many frustrating years constantly being told by supposedly brilliant experts that his aggressive style of game was entirely too physical to last a long time, that his massive topspin was incredibly extreme and ultimately detrimental, and that his forced left-handed setup was nothing more than a silly, passing gimmick. Ultimately, he spectacularly won 22 Grand Slam singles titles and proved every single one of them completely wrong. When Rafael Nadal intently looks at Alex Eala today, he is absolutely not just looking at exactly who she happens to be right now in this exact moment. He is purposefully looking far ahead at exactly who she is rapidly becoming. And that specific, profound, undeniable fact, far more than any outrageous ticket price reported in the media, is the absolute, real, enduring story that needs to be properly told. And now, incredibly, here we suddenly are. It is the highly anticipated month of March 2026, and we are currently entering Indian Wells and the famously grueling Sunshine Swing portion of the tour. This specifically represents the absolute biggest, most important stretch of the Women's Tennis Association competitive calendar outside of the 4 major Grand Slams themselves. Eala is currently ranked comfortably within the highly respected top 40 players worldwide. She also just incredibly managed to beat a highly rated top 10 player at the prestigious Dubai tournament. She is undeniably rising up the competitive ranks much faster than any of her harshest critics can possibly keep up with right now. Her incredible journey started humbly from a simple local clinic in bustling Manila and led all the way to the pristine, exclusive courts of sunny Mallorca. From being a simple, unknown wildcard, ranked an unimpressive 140, she remarkably blasted her way straight into the elite top 50 of the entire competitive world. She amazingly evolved from a young girl who once eagerly chased Rafa Nadal through a busy airport terminal to a fierce competitor that the exact same Rafa Nadal is now willingly chasing across massive stadiums. It is simply incredible that he ended up spending $10,000 just for the absolute honor and distinct privilege of watching her compete in person. This entire narrative is absolutely not just another fabricated, empty hype story designed to simply generate quick internet clicks. This is also not merely a superficial, feel-good headline meant to simply sell more newspapers. This is the absolute real, thoroughly documented, completely verified, and genuinely inspiring rise of Alexandra Eala. And the absolute best part is that her incredible journey is only just beginning right now. The legendary King of Clay firmly believed in her massive potential long before the rest of the entire watching world actually did. Now, finally, the rest of the global tennis community is desperately trying to catch up to exactly what he clearly saw all along. If this genuinely incredible, highly inspiring story somehow gave you massive chills, and if you truly believe in exactly what Alex Eala is currently building with her career, then please smash that subscribe button right now to actively show your support. We passionately cover women's professional tennis like absolutely nobody else on the entire internet today. We are fully committed to bringing you the intense drama, the fierce rivalries, and the profound, deeply moving moments that the mainstream media completely misses or chooses to ignore. You absolutely do not want to miss a single second of exactly what is coming next in this amazing, unfolding story. Please subscribe immediately. We promise you will deeply thank yourself later for joining our community.